Now, the number of new COVID-19 cases reported in South Africa continues to decline steadily, with 13,973 reported on Saturday, down from the 14,880 new infections the previous day. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has said fighting COVID-19 was the party's top priority for 2021. Ramaphosa said a mass vaccination program would be implemented as soon as South Africa received its first batch of vaccine. It's almost a year since we've been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. To reflect on how the governing party has performed, we're joined by ANC National Executive Member Mondli Gungubele. Dr. Gungubele, good evening, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Let's just begin with your reflections. It's almost a year.
Good evening, Bongi, and good evening to your worship.
Nkosi, good evening, good evening. And let's reflect. It's nearly a year since COVID-19, hit South Africa. Certainly, we've seen, quite a lot of devastation, deaths, and of course, families that have been left grieving, while we've been seeing a number of, increasing infections, particularly now in the second wave. And while the ANC president has been talking about just how much this is a priority and to ensure that they do minimize the devastation for a lot of South Africans, how do you think your organization has done in, ensuring that it cushions the blow for many South Africans around COVID-19?
Listen, Bongi, thank you very much, and thanks to your viewership, your audience. Remember, when COVID-19 came, it came at a time when our economy was already limping, and it actually never made the situation better. It worsened it. Naturally, there was a response by government with regard to a lot of interventions from the point of supporting those who are not at work, SMMEs, those who are going to lose revenues, and a number of other interventions in the economic space. And of course, the recovery plan, which was announced by the president October 15, which deals with the aggressive infrastructure intervention, mass employment, and dealing with economic reforms, reindustrialization, focusing on SMMEs, fighting crime, and strengthening the state. A number of these issues are the issues that were lined up and which sought to intervene in this situation.
Now, when you look at this recovery plan, I remember having a conversation here on the show with Utatu Enoch Godongwana, who was talking about just part of where the shortcomings were just to be able to offer sufficient assistance to small businesses, and saying that the organization needs to really speak to the banks, particularly when it comes to the loans, that they were supposed to guarantee these particular small businesses, because it looked like it became a color issue there, that more and more black businesses were not able to get access to that. I wonder then, where is that process at the moment?
Thanks, Bogi. I think there has been intervention. I don't have the latest update, but all I know, the organization expressed a displeasure and discomfort. Because remember, at the time of reporting, hardly 15% of that 200 billion was spent on loan scheme. And of course, issues like the one you are raising, of actually having that money, having eyes in terms of who it is given to, were issues which were a source of concern. There was a deliberate, there was intervention in that. I don't have the latest report with regard. It's a matter that we have to move to its conclusion, because unless it is resolved, our economy recovery plan will actually be found wanting.
And talking about being found wanting, there's also been, PPE corruption allegations that have been, strewn all over newspaper headlines, and thus widening the gap of trust, particularly between your organization and the people.
Yeah, it's a very important point, Bongi. Remember when AG gave his interim report on the millions that were squandered and stolen, there was an immediate intervention. A number of cases that are before court now. At the same time, the organization met in August. I think it was towards the end of July and later the end of August, to actually make sure that we affirm the resolutions of the conference. Because the point was, when we met as the NEC, was that if we are a governing party, for society to rely upon us, to actually clean government, we must first deal with ourselves, because the principle is for the message to be credible, the messenger has to be credible itself. We had to make sure that we deal with the credibility of the messenger. That's why the issues of step aside, going to the Integrity Commission, and also appearing before the Integrity Commission and so on had to be dealt with.
But I don't think they've been dealt with, Dr. Gungubele, with all due respect. I mean, if you're still having a situation where the party is battling to implement its own resolution of step aside, it appears to be not applied in an even manner, because you still have others that are facing serious allegations that are still within the movement and have not stepped aside.
Let me make this point, Bongi. I think you're correct. Maybe allow me to preface this by saying, for economic recovery to take place, you need all stakeholders to buy in. The credibility of the environment and its predictability is very key. Government imperatives are also very key. The governing party is not supposed to be found wanting. You are right. The point I'm trying to make to you is that in implementing this thing, a lot of things came out. Let me give you an example. The issue of people who are members of parliament required that guidelines must be put in place, which I anticipate the NEC will be dealing with them with effect from tomorrow, and the NEC on the 21st. We must come clear on these matters. Because at the end of the day, when we implement these matters, we must not be found wanting, and we stand a risk if we just implement them recklessly, find ourselves on the wrong side of the criminals.
And are you also going to be dealing decisively with the issue of the Integrity Commission? Because even your own messenger, your own president, doesn't appear to have respect for it. Because if he is going to be asking the Integrity Commission to postpone his appearance, but other members of the party are still expected to appear, how then does the entire party begin to follow suit?
Thanks, Bonge. I listened to the president on this matter, where he acknowledged that with hindsight, he could have approached it differently. I think what the president was saying, there should be no kings on this matter. There should be no president, there should be no SG, there should be no Gungubele. We're trying to implement a fundamental principle that is going to hit a lot of people who are on the wrong side of the law. So being consistent and also indiscriminate in implementing it is what I find from the president when he says, with hindsight, he thinks he could have done it differently.
But you do agree that what he did initially sent the wrong message?
I'm sure the president has already made that statement himself. I don't have to repeat it, Bonnie.
But you do agree, as an ANC member, you do agree that it sent the wrong message, because this is what sends mixed signals for people to then not respect the work of the Integrity Commission.
Let me put it this way. It sends a wrong message if any of us gives an impression of making difficult the work of the Integrity Commission.
All right. And let's talk then about the credibility of, the ANC. Would you say it's still intact?
Until we implement a lot of these issues we've spoken about, it's going to be found wanting. But because I do not doubt the commitment of the NEC to deal with this matter, that historic integrity will stand an opportunity to rescue it. Sorry.
Okay, I certainly hope it's not an urgent call, but you can continue.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's just my other phone.
Okay, and I wonder then, because, we heard some very explosive allegations, against the president coming out from the Zondo Commission last week, of course, in the public domain when he was speaking to different media houses. He's gone and denied some of these and even went as far as to say that if there are charges against him, he's happy to step aside. I wonder then, will the NEC in the coming days when it meets, will it entertain these allegations?
Our approach, Bongi, is that there's a number of our comrades who are appearing before Zondo Commission. There are those who have been lined up to appear before Zondo Commission. The NEC is awaiting those processes and take decisions at the right time. That includes the president, who the commission announced, And the president said, if I actually listened to him, he said he's looking forward to actually appear before that and clarify his own issues.
And, I really want to pick your brain on this one. Just a few weeks ago, we saw an ANC NEC member, Dakota Lekwete, in his personal capacity, penning that opinion piece that seeked to suggest that, state machinery may also be used to deal with some of those that may not necessarily be in agreement with some of the fellow comrades within the ANC. And that's, of course, signaling that maybe there might be more to this factionalism than meets the eye. What do you make of such allegations?
Let me say, Bongi, I've got a lot of respect for Comrade Dakota, but to be honest with you, when I heard him saying that, I found it disappointing. Let me tell you why. The governing party is the principal champion to ensure that the laws of the country are implemented. Amongst others, the laws that provides for the work of the NPA. It must be disappointing and discomforting for any key leader of the ruling party to cast aspersions on the executions of the laws of the country without waiting for all allegations to be put to test. And over and above that, if you read the resolution on corruption of the ANC, it actually directs the ANC leaders and the entire membership to work collaboratively with law enforcement agents. For any member of the ANC to speak in that, I want to argue is out of turn. It's quite disappointing.
And I have to ask you this as we wrap up this discussion. The president campaigned on the card of unity, but it appears the center is not holding. It hasn't been holding for quite some time now. What do you think the ANC needs to do in order to find itself in a position of unity? Because even if when you look at the top six in and itself, there does appear to be some cracks there.
Let me put it this way. That's a very important question, Bongi. My argument, which I want to submit, is that there is a moment where we have to choose between corrupt unity and renewal of the ANC for clean unity. And my argument is that the unity of purpose and the unity of principle dictate that once there's a contest between unity and renewal, renewal has to take precedence and the clean unity has to be incidental upon renewal. In other words, we will have to reach a situation where ANC is led towards renewal and the unity coming upon renewal. In other words, you do not allow renewal to be carried based on unity, because there's a tendency to confuse the two. Other people bordering on saying, please leave corruption or we'll be divided. I've listened to some of our leaders saying, when we intervene on some of sensitive decisions, it will divide the organization. It will be the most embarrassing thing that we are scared of implementing the decisions of an organization because it will divide the organization. How can an organization be divided by implementing its own decision? So the key thing to me is that renewal is sacrosanct. Any unity that wants to contest that should actually be put aside. The only unity that must be actually protected is the one that is incidental upon a renewed organization.
I tell you what, thank you so much for your time tonight. I wish, I'm sure many wish they could be flies on the wall, at the upcoming NEC meeting. That's Mondli Gungubele there, who's the ANC's National Executive Committee member.